this week, right?
Mhm.
Right. If you're
So
doing,
You're making extra money today, this week, right? I mean, we're gonna all get paid triple time.
changes, flat rate.
You know, several of the towns I work with don't even get cycles. Give them some money. The select board, you know, a lot of, but the town of Hartsville, because they didn't have an administrator, used to pay them like that.
I get paid for us.
All right, I'm gonna start on time because we do have a busy week here.
We're on time kind of people.
Yeah, for me, that's unusual. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 6 P.M. And, the first item on the agenda is public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion but not action. Yes, Jeff.
No.
Jeff Westcott, 40 South Road. At the last selectmen's meeting, I made an incorrect statement, and I would just like to correct it. That a load of salt and sand, as stated, was more expensive than a load of salt. That is incorrect. With current invoices and additional trucking, a load of salt costs $500 more than a load of salt and sand.
And do you remember how much a load costs? Just curious, I have no concept.
About $2,500 for a load of salt versus about $2,000 for a load of salt and sand,
Okay.
with the trucking and barging fees all included in that.
Oh. Great,
Thank you.
thanks, Jeff. So item 3, town reports. So start off with the town administrator report and, you know, Vicky, you don't have to read the thing, but, there's a couple things on there and we could see if anybody has any questions.
Yep, couple things on it, as always, planning, board applications needed for a couple committees. There is a summary about the tree removal that CMP is going to be doing. Addison, the AmeriCorps, fellow, connected with, the individual from Lucas Tree that's gonna be tasked to do that. I'm not gonna read through all that, hopefully you went through and read that. What we're gonna do is we are going to create some flyers and some notices, just because it is something that is not town that's being done, that is going to be left on people's private property to an extent. We just want to spread the communication to make sure, so we'll make sure we try to share that as much as possible. Any questions about that? Right, Jenks Road and Hook Road, GEI is finalizing the information for that, so hopefully within the next week or two, we will receive those applications to the code enforcement officer. From GEI on the behalf of the town. Once we receive those and make sure, and the code enforcement officer make sure everything is in the application, we will set a date for Board of Appeals to meet. We will send out the notices to all of the abutters for both locations. And Board of Appeals will have a public hearing to hear both of those proposals in front of them and make a decision. Hopefully, once approved, we can go to construction, and hopefully, for the 3rd year in a row, we can have the parking implemented before Memorial Day, which is, we're 3 years into this process, and this is the 3rd year I've been saying, we're gonna try to do this by Memorial Day, so hopefully this is the year. And then just a brief little kind of memo for you in terms of some IT services and reviews that we've done recently, just to make sure that what we have for licenses and backups and cybersecurity is fit to what our needs are, and that we are paying what we should. And so we had 2 different meetings, and we're in pretty good understanding where we are. They are going to give us a couple more quotes about a few other services that they offer, including the phones and a couple other things. And it's not necessarily mean we're going to be bringing those proposals in front of the board. It's just, if we can save money on the phone services, which the town spends an absurd amount of money on, then that is certainly a proposal that I'll bring in front of you. But once we have that information, then that's something that, I'll share with you. And then there are some upcoming meetings. I've been trying to put any municipal meetings in the different, TA reports as they become available. They do kind of change and fluctuate a little bit, so if you want the most current, up-to-date meetings, then I would encourage you to look at the town website. There is a facilities committee meeting that has been added since I typed this up for Thursday. And then a reminder to the board that I will be out of town starting next Monday. And then on here, it says the 17th, we actually fly back in late 17th, so I'll be back in town. So that's the TA report. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, in your absence, kind of what's the protocol when you're not here? Do you put it out of office on your email and then if somebody else kind of checking things?
I'm gonna put an out of office on my email. Krista is gonna be gone for a little while too, so the two of us are overlapping a little bit. The town office is only going to be open 2 days. Well, Chris is there by herself. And so, we are, she has a notice on her email and I'll have a notice on my email. That unless it's an emergency, that we'll get to them when we return. And I'll probably end up checking my emails a couple times while I'm gone.
So I'm just wondering, what is the protocol if something comes up that you would normally deal with that's significant?
So my plan is just to talk to all the different departments to let them know that I'm gonna be gone. In the past, I mean, I usually take a week off every couple of years, a full week. No big emergencies has happened, but there's really not anything too severe or pressing that somebody within the department wouldn't be able to handle if I'm not around, but I'll make sure that they're all aware of my absence and, if something major happens, then I'm still reachable by phone.
I think, for example, if it was a major public works issue, it would be good, I would think, to alert the select board that, I don't know, we've had a, catastrophic culvert failure or something. I mean, I think you can use your own judgment, but I would hope that somebody would be, they would communicate, the board, the department heads would communicate with maybe the chair of the select board to let us know what's going on, because in your absence, I think, there's a lot of moving parts and it would just be good to know. And then it would be good in your out of office email that you add somebody's name, in the event of, you need an urgent response, please contact somebody. And either Krista or one of us or something like that, just because I know we've had a lot of time sensitive things going on. And, I just, like this grant application we're gonna submit, if there's an issue, we wouldn't know if it only goes to you and there's nobody else they can contact. So, anyway, that would be helpful. And I guess whatever, I think it would be good. Mark, did you guys have a protocol in the past about what you would do once the TA wasn't here?
I don't recall of a specific one, Carol. I think, just like Vic is describing, there's probably some availability to make contact if necessary, but I think you're probably on the right track with the different departments and the department heads pretty much know how to handle things. And with emergency calls, it would be the chief and the sheriff's department anyway.
Right.
And so no, I don't recall that we had anything specific in place.
And the roads are already posted, so we're okay. Okay. All right, that sounds good. Any other questions from the board on the TA report? Any questions from the public on the TA report? Okay, moving on, the departmental reports, I'm not gonna go through them specifically, but we did, as usual, have a very detailed report from Public Works and Solid Waste. And Before I move away from those, did anybody have any questions for Jeff while he's here on either of those reports? And the public, if you have any questions on those, now's the time. And then the other, we did get somehow magically, we got a report from the code enforcement officer too, so that's good. And then the fire department, so we're doing better on the monthly reports with, I'm sure a little bit of prodding. So, no questions on the town reports? Okay, departmental reports. All right, we're gonna move on to regular business, and 2619 is to hear an update from the facilities committee on the fire department station proposal and take any action. So I don't know who's planning to do that. Okay,
So did everybody get that back last month?
yeah, and I think stand over here, yeah.
Did everybody get the packets and read them? Does anybody have any questions on it? Okay, well, I think that's probably the best way to go, because it's pretty full report.
What was that?
Oh, the question is this other page that doesn't say C1, is that C2?
Yeah, I couldn't totally follow it, honestly.
C1 would be that one, C2 is the one
It doesn't say.
that has the extra bit. Yep.
That's.
That was easy.
So could you just briefly go through the different proposals, because I didn't actually follow,
You didn't read your whole,
what'd you
you
say?
didn't read your homework?
I did read my
Oh,
homework,
okay.
but I couldn't figure out what corresponded to what. So you have phase one, option C1, and phase one, option C2. And we have plans labeled A prime, and plans labeled C, so which plans go with which option?
So should we start with just the two options and talk about why and why not, maybe? Would that be a good place?
Start with B1.
So C1 is living quarters and two ambulance bays that house the current ambulances. The living quarters would be for the per diems, that's the training house currently, that we have in the summer. We have 4 bunk rooms in there. We talked about only 2, but with storms and for other housing, such as when we have the mechanics come over and work on the equipment, that would be an easy place to put them instead of having to get a room for hotel if it's not full or something like that. So we went with 4 bunk rooms, and then the 2 ambulance bays. We proposed C2, the one with 1 extra bay that would bring 1 fire truck across the road. That would do a couple of things. It would make it so each truck in the station has a bay to back into, so you don't have to back them in diagonally. And as you may know, we had some damage, and hopefully we can minimize the possibility for that to happen again. So it'd be more safe and efficient for everybody. It also brings up the point of fire protection. Right now, if we have a fire already, it's in one basket. We don't, if the station caught on fire, which that happens occasionally across the country, we have no means to the fire. If we had 1 truck across the station road, you'd be able to at least put some water on the fire and the difference there. We've put in a lot of thought to this. We've been talking about this for 2 years, and we've thrown out all kinds of ideas, and I think this definitely covers the immediate needs. I think it's a huge step in the right direction, and I think it's a great idea. Does anybody have any questions on the layout or anything? 1 versus 2?
So what are the pros and cons of the 2 different building materials?
Yeah. Well, that's something we've talked about, and that would be a better thing for the architects to talk to about, but we're gonna investigate that more, where the efficiency of it opposed to the cost. So you pay more upfront, but you save more on heating. And we're gonna have to look a little more in depth into that, but and then bring that to everybody.
Yeah, it wasn't clear if, which construction was more energy efficient.
Basically, the more money you spend, the more efficient it's gonna be, that's.
So the wood structures are more efficient.
But
The
that,
wood is more efficient.
yes, yeah, and the metal goes up faster and it's cheaper to put up, it's just easier. Like the prefab metal buildings down at the boatyard, they go up that, they're great, but not as energy efficient.
And one of my questions was, looking at the two options, what is the cost estimate for heating with each of those? Like, what is the R value of the insulation? So we know that the one that is the traditional wood frame construction
Yeah.
is more efficient, so just being able to compare what is the R value and what are the approximate heating costs
If that's, we'll have to get into the material detail.
before we just have.
Yeah.
Okay. May I go through a few other things? Can I ask,
Yeah,
Yeah.
keep going.
keep going? So I've been on the facilities committee and I certainly see the need for this. First, I just want to talk about the 2-bay versus 3-bay. Clearly, a 3rd bay adds a bunch. What I like about the 3rd bay is that if we do the 2-bay, we're still fitting 4 vehicles into 3 bays. Making sure that people are aware of that, and it's, to me, having a 3rd bay meets the need now. Instead of creating remaining with this situation with 4 vehicles into 3 bays. Which is just gonna squeeze things in further down the line, so I do like the idea of the 3rd bay, if it's possible that be considered, I think it. Meets the need now for our trucks and also we're looking at other trucks and replacements in the future, so it meets that need as well. I do wanna address the, living quarters. It's been my opinion, and you know this all along, that we have a need for housing. When the town office was built, when the fire station was built, that was built as a fire and rescue station with housing for the sheriff. And when the town became a town, that was turned from a sheriff's quarters into the town office, which has served well enough with some issues. But I think that this doesn't solve that need that we have been able to make. I'm saying just to make. So it doesn't serve the need that we anticipate having. The sheriff is now in a rental, which could end at any moment, and if that rental was not available, it would be very difficult to replace, especially at that cost. So I just want to say, if the 2 bunk rooms, the day room, kitchen, if that back section that you see on the plans was removed, now keep in mind, this construction has to be at the highest level, so we're talking about 550 a square foot and up to do this structure. If 1,000 feet was removed, we could do 2 2-bedroom ADUs on the property for less money than this 1,000 square feet. So because those would be built at a different construction level, not at the construction level of an essential structure. And I have here quotes from Backyard ADUs, if anyone wants to take a look, but we can look at 2-bedroom, fully all plumbed and wired and heated, ready to deliver onto a slab, and it does include the slab, but there will be some complications of bringing it out to be showing the demonstration that we can do. If we removed the 1,000 feet, we could do 2 2-bedroom ADUs, which are just fully functioning homes. The other thing that I would say is that it keeps 2 bunk rooms here, which I do see the need for. So it does keep some of that space there. I just want to put it on the table that as a member of the facilities committee, I see that as a important need that would be met, that could be met within the envelope of this project.
So I'll speak to that. As the committee, been on the committee for 2 years, we discussed that and we unanimously voted against.
Yeah, you did. I know.
And we had spoke about putting the sheriff in those quarters.
Right.
Right, and that's not gonna, I think we know that now.
Yeah, yeah.
Say that again, I didn't understand what you meant.
We don't know. So what was the rationale?
To not have the sheriff living in the firehouse.
Well, that, plus you came up with a decision that having maybe wasn't a good idea.
That's completely new,
Oh,
that's
okay.
completely new.
I'm trying to wreck my head.
Okay.
Well,
I've
we're
discussed
talking
it
about
in
moving the EMS providers over there. The per diems over the AU.
I think it gives that flexibility,
Okay,
yes.
so, I think it's a one simple answer with a multifaceted reasoning behind it. So right now, there's a national shortage on EMTs. It's very difficult to get EMTs. Very difficult to get sheriffs over here, as we know. We have one in the last 15 years. Nobody else wants to come over here. So we're fighting for the same EMTs. I think that, I can't think of a place where the per diems would, any place else, live someplace else, or even on site, and then go to the station. I don't think you'd find that I think that would push people away. I do. I know the people personally that I've been able to get over here, which isn't that many, and I just don't think it's a good idea. I think it would limit our options, and our options are very limited at this time as it is. I don't know where you could take out. I don't understand taking out all the 1,000 square feet.
I can show you. If you want to step
I
up.
don't understand how that's gonna work.
If right here,
So you're gonna take out the bathrooms and everything.
no bathrooms are removed at all. Just from here back is 1,000 square feet. So it would be these two,
Pull the whole
Bunk
day room
rooms?
and everything.
yeah, this whole end right here. So it would include the two bunk rooms, all of this
So
infrastructure.
before I'm not even gonna speak to that tonight. That would have to come to the committee.
I know that.
Committees.
Right,
But, we spent 2 years on this and we're 100% on board with this, and we talked about alternative businesses.
And it would just seem to me if you're trying to attract not just good people, but anybody, EMT people.
Well,
No,
yeah.
that these have to be nice enough so somebody wants.
Yeah, so that's,
Somebody wants to come out here and.
we don't pave the roads with gold here, but
Right.
we have to kind of keep up to the Joneses. And these are really like dorm room sized rooms. They're very small.
Yeah,
With a day room where you can sit back and relax after you've done whatever you need to do for the day. But, yeah, right now, I still stand behind that decision, but before we talk about it, I'm talking out of terms here, because should go for the committee.
so your group also disfavors the idea of having the police person in this facility.
Well, yes, so
So,
Eliza's idea was to put them directly in this building.
yeah.
Take out a lot of this and actually have them living in there, and there's just not enough room, it would be.
So if we put an ADU out here somewhere.
it would be a separate.
And we've actually talked about sheriff's quarters, and that was in the original plan, but it was much larger. And we see that as a need. I actually was the one to bring it up, but, putting it in there would be a waste of money. It would be dysfunctional, and I don't think we would attract a sheriff to come over here, because the sheriff, I've been here all my life. I've known pretty much all the sheriffs for the last 45 years. Most of them come with a wife or family, and they're not gonna live inside the fire station. It's just not gonna, yeah.
So I think the last time you guys presented, though, there was a separate building structure of sort of living quarters that was separate from that's my recollection, that you presented a plan where there was a separate structure from the building, is that right?
That would be like phase 3. This is phase 1. It would be,
But I don't think there were 4 rooms in the in the building at that time. I could go back and look, but I guess why did you decide to change that?
I don't remember changing. This has pretty much been the plan.
So you've
since-
always had 4 rooms in there?
Yeah, that's pretty much been the plan from the beginning. Yeah.
No, and I guess, I mean, I'm not a fire person, but, I think thinking about the multi-use structure does appeal to me, and personally, I mean, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but it seems like having a sort of more, traditional living quarters. I think one of the reasons we can attract a sheriff is because we have a nice cottage for them to stay in. And so I don't know why we wouldn't kind of use that same concept for living quarters for really anybody, sheriffs, EMTs, you know, what EMS. So I mean, I think it's hard enough to get people over here, you're right, but I would think having sort of more of a cottage style quarters would be more appealing, but that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the AU thing, like I said, I don't want to speak against it, about it now, because we haven't talked about it within the committee, but, yeah. Traditionally, in fire and EMS, they all stay in the station attached, that's pretty much how everybody works.
On islands, that's how they're doing it. They have no separate
There's
structures.
all kinds of strange ways that they do things. But I can tell you, I was on EMS to Unbridged Islands.
Right.
Committee, and I can tell you that what we're doing right now is far ahead of what they're doing down east, right now, and have been. And they're struggling with much bigger problems than we are because of what we're doing.
What do you mean? I guess I don't
Like
understand.
transportation and the number of EMTs. There's islands that depend on life flight coming to transport their patients, which around here that would, if we're lucky, it's gonna add an hour to our call. So I don't really wanna do what they use them as an example, because what they're doing definitely isn't gonna work for us. It would be going the wrong way. So I feel confident that we're going in the right direction. I have a really good handle on fire and EMS personnel. And the committee's done a lot of work on this over the last 2 years. And I back their decision, our decision.
I'll add that this is something I learned from you participating in that. Shabik has probably the highest per capita number of calls for rescue. Were you able to confirm that?
No, we're not the highest, but we're,
Per capita.
yeah, we're up there, but we're not.
Is that report available yet?
But EMS Unbridged Island, what, no, either.
No. Thanks.
Okay, so just so I'm understanding where we're at then, so this is the proposal, you guys were committee. You've had discussions about co-locating the sheriff and to rule that out. What was the reason for that?
We're not ruling it out, well, co-location, yes, so. Phase 2 or 3, so this is phase 1, originally we had a large station.
Right.
And it fitted all the needs, but we had to scale back the
Right.
cost. In there, we had living quarters for the sheriff at some point. And we would build the system so that we could add on, so if we wanted to have a sheriff, an ADU for the sheriff next year, 10 years down the road, we have the infrastructure for the sewer and the septic system and the water and we can just hook up that way. So there would be no cost there other than hook into it. So we would plan in that manner, go in that direction, but.
I'm just trying to understand the objection to co-locating the sheriff. I mean, so you have 2 EMTs coming over covering nights that are on per diems. Right, so they're taking up 2 of the rooms. And the sheriff would be taking a 3rd one that leaves a room.
Well,
If there's an emergency, it's, obviously.
so the sheriff's not gonna live in this building like that. I mean, they need a house to live in. The per diems are coming over for a 12 or 24-hour shift and then they're going home. The sheriff's gonna come over for 3 months and stay here. So you couldn't expect a sheriff and his wife and family to live in something like that. That wouldn't work.
And then and then as far as the ADUs as a alternative for some of the sleeping quarters, so that's not something you guys have discussed, at least
No.
recently. So is that something you'll take back to
Yeah,
to committee? Okay.
Absolutely.
And, just the basis for the four, living quarters. So I just heard Earhart say, you need at any one time, probably 2 per diem employees,
And that's what I'm saying.
max.
So right now, we're in this boat because we planned for 20 years in the station that we were in. And we're outside of that now, we want to plan for 20 years down the road. And if we don't use those for anything other than the mechanics coming over to work on the trucks and instance like that, I think it's money well spent. That it doesn't add much to the overall cost of the meeting. And it gives us the flexibility to find a place for the mechanics alone to stay is with the community.
So I guess I was under the mistaken impression it did add a fair amount of cost to the building.
I couldn't tell you the exact cost, but we talked about that within the committee. I don't know, do you remember, Vika, what it was? 2 rooms, I can't.
I remember the discussion of the difference between 2 rooms and 4 rooms. The discussion that I remember that had a significant jump was out of the 3rd bay, but I don't remember what the cost difference was between the 2 rooms. With the conversation about the sheriff, I think with the facilities committee it was the initial conversation that shouldn't be part of phase 1. In my most recent communication with the owner of the property, who we have historically rented from, he did say that he is gonna be putting the house on the market in the near future, so this very well likely might be the last season that we have that as an option, so. How and if that impacts, not necessarily maybe this building itself, but I think having some kind of living quarters on that land once it's cleared might be more pressing than it was even a month ago.
The original plan for a larger station, which really was phase 1, 2, and 3, included moving the fire department across the road as well. And am I correct, taking the present fire station and having that become sheriff's quarters and per diem rooms? So that was if,
Just sheriff's post, and everything else would be across the street.
oh, right.
The original plan was moving fire and rescue entirely across the street based on the research that was done by the committee and with the assistance of Port City. The current building is more than what the needs of a town office are. And so the apparatus area would have been transitioned and renovated into like an apartment type style complex with the idea of that being quarters for a sheriff housing in the future.
And one of the things Senator King's office released today, funding opportunity, and one of my questions is if we're it's a short deadline, but would having separate structures be included in that funding opportunity? Because that would make a difference as well. So if we were looking at funding, it would be difficult to do if we were doing it as a phase 2 to go back and ask for funding for.
So there's some questions in the memo about the funding, which we can address after that, but I think I just wanted to get through the questions sort of on the, structure and design. So one question I have is, in terms of water and septic, have you already done, I don't know what's been done on the property, so you haven't checked for that yet? Okay. And this would, of course, have to go through the planning board, which I assume that's figured into the timeline. So the bottom line is what the committee voted to recommend to the select board is the option with the 3rd bay.
Yes.
And so the total cost for that, just so I'm 100% clear here, would be 2.9 if it's wood and 2.3 if it's metal or some kind of mixed construction, which is 2.5. So anywhere from just close to 3 million to 2.5. Is that kind of where, or 2.3?
With the town, paying half of the cost.
If we got it.
Yes,
So where's the other half coming from
state and federal funding.
that you have in hand?
No,
Oh,
we
okay.
do not have it in hand, so. Eliza can probably speak to it as well, in Port City's been building these firehouses, pretty much they're the only ones, I think, building firehouses in the whole state right now, it looks like. And have been for quite a while, they feel that, this particular proposal right now stands a really good chance of getting 50-50 funding from state and federal funding. And the best way to get it is that a lot of towns will go and ask for 50% of the money on the idea that only if the state, we can get 50% matching grants from the state and federal.
And what is the state program that has the matching funds?
Eliza,
I don't know I'm not familiar with it.
that would be,
19.
but that's how most of Port City, or a lot of Port City's facilities have been built.
The CDS funding that they're due to receive for the stone work, Port City has had a couple of projects that they have worked on where the towns have received some funding through that same type of programs towards the fire stations. So I'm
So-
assuming that that's what Ralph is
Yeah,
referring.
fire stations are pretty fundable. They are usually. So there's a couple things that you, so to jump into the financial part, the or the memo has a question about. Looking for select board input on the congressionally directed spending. And before I get into that though, first, I just want to understand in terms of the timeline. I just want to be sure that you know, one of the things we're trying to do as a town, and one of the things the finance committee's been working on particularly is staging or staggering our projects so that the funding, you know, we're gonna have to bond certain parts of projects. So it looks like you're looking at bonding in the summer of 27.
Yes, and
And is that something that finance?
Information that was online, I thought it said. Ask the town for approval for the 50% funding, assuming you'd get a match. This June. Fiscal year 27,
yes,
and I have some concern about that timing and that we. Don't really know in total where we're gonna be with the stone pier. Cost and bonding.
And then the other thing that's on the schedule, and that was really the same kind of question, is initiate municipal bond in the summer of 27. And since that is part of our capital planning, has the finance committee, you know, kind of blessed that timeframe?
No,
No, okay.
so I had one brief conversation with David Bruner, and it basically. We talked about this big project
Yeah, okay.
page that was presented as we started the capital planning process. And the message that I hope everybody heard is the finance committee is generally okay with $10 million of new bonds spread out over hopefully 5 years, something like that. And that given Port Road, Stone Pier, and potentially needing some bonding money for South Shore Drive. Those things all add up to 7, if the numbers are right, 7 million.
They're going up.
So, okay, and so we said that until we know where we stand with those projects, we shouldn't be committing to the public service building, nor Pleasant Island Wharf.
Right.
But we ought to try to move those forward as far as developing the projects and
Yep, okay.
whatever.
So the answer is this is sort of a facilities committee timeline, but it hasn't been sort of coordinated with the finance committee.
well, I thought David, that was David in the public review discussion, I guess. But that was the understanding.
Yeah, well, I think that's a big concern of mine, and you know, because this is a pretty big nut to crack as a community, and so we can't do everything at once. And I think that, so this will require some further kind of input from the finance committee, particularly in terms of the magnitude and the timing. And, so this is called the critical path timeline. And, you know, I think that it's probably a little optimistic based on what we've got on our plates right now, already in the hopper, so to speak, in terms of funding. So, because what we're trying to avoid, if you had got, you know, the finance committee presentation, there's a big spike in taxes. So we're trying we know we're gonna experience increasing taxes, but we kind of want to moderate that increase so that it's manageable for households on Shabig. So I think this really is sort of a whole separate discussion, probably with the finance committee in terms of kind of the magnitude and the funding source. Then in terms of the congressionally directed spending, it sort of asks the question, who does this? And do we need to hire a consultant? And I will tell you now that, you know, we've done 2 of these. We did get funded in 24, and then they didn't pass the budget, so we didn't get that money. And then we did get money last year. And I think it's a very political and sensitive process. So it really needs to be kind of managed by one individual. And it was a couple individuals. First time it was Bob and Vika, second time it was me and Vika. Because you basically have to get invited by the congressional office to submit an application. And I do think this project, don't get me wrong, I think it's very fundable, but one of the key criteria is community support and financial, having the financial capacity. And that's, I think I mentioned to somebody that just today that the town of Freiburg did get a congressionally directed spending award, and then they didn't get the funding from the townspeople did not approve the funding. And so that is not a place we want to be. And that was a $4 million award that the townspeople at town meeting, they hadn't pre-approved the match spending and they didn't vote for it. And it was actually for a fire department. So that's one thing that they're very adamant about, that you show that you have good community support. Then the other thing is that you usually have to have a match. Most of these are coming through the USDA, which is what we got, our grant was, and it's a 25% match. So if you're asking for $1 million, you would need to come up with 250,000. And you have to show that ahead of time. You can't say we're gonna bring it to the table later. So, and we actually, I hear that you're being asked, what we've been told is to ask, and this is the kind of conversation you have with the congressional office, ask for the full amount, you might only get half. But the strategy they told us was to, in fact, that's what we did last year, was bump up our request for a larger amount. So it really depends on each office. So Shelley's office, she is the most island friendly. Her applications are due Friday, so that's out of the picture. And then the other 2, Susan Collins' office is the 18th, and then King's office is the 25th. And I don't know that if it's really feasible to pursue that for this, you really kind of need to start you have to have a lot of your ducks lined up to kind of submit the request, because they only give you a couple weeks. We can contact them and see what the options are, but I think the other part of it is it really has to be vested by the community, and I'm not sure kind of where we are in that process.
That's exactly what we talked about with the community, and that's what we're trying to present here. We wanted to ask the community before we went past the funding, so that we could do that hand in hand.
Well, you kind of have to do that first before you ask for congressionally directed funding.
Yeah.
Are you trying to do that before these deadlines?
No,
Not for this year.
not for this year.
Oh, okay, so
So-
I was under the impression you were trying to pursue an application for this.
No, we
Fiscal
want to
year.
what we were presenting is to vote on it this year in June. Either June or July, at the town meeting, to then apply for the funding in the following. year.
Oh, okay, that is way more feasible, but
That's-
in the meantime, we would have to kind of sit down with the finance committee and figure out the timing.
And
And
then-
so
Yeah.
that makes way more sense to me. I think though, in terms of voting at town meeting, we did kind of appropriate a big chunk of change for the stone pier the last time so that that did really help our application. That we appropriated a pretty big amount of, I think it was 300,000, and we had a total of almost $1 million in that account. That definitely advantaged us for our application. So that is, and I don't know what's in your reserve. Do we even have a reserve?
Yeah, we was told by Fort City and what their recommendation was, is that we would ask the community, the island, to vote to pay for half of it. With the contingency of only if we get the state and federal funding.
Yeah, and I don't know if the finance committee could support that at the moment, given where we're at, right? Because it's not in the process.
Yeah, the fire department reserve is not super big after you buy the air tanks and the compressor. I think it's down to about 115,000. We're proposing putting quite a bit of money in to the fire department reserve. I think there's 180,000. Kind of in our roughed out first draft of what we put in to the reserve accounts. But I have on a list, there's a lot of discussion items about what the priorities are. And one of those things that's on the list is, do we need to set aside some funds in support of the new fire station? Like we did for the Stone Wharf. And you've said that maybe we need to put some more funds away for the Stone Wharf. So,
Yeah, and the other thing that, just to be aware, because I think people forget this, and we had enough, but you might, in addition to what the town might appropriate, you have to have the match too. So most of, at least the USDA grants with this 25% match, that's another 250,000 for $1 million. So and that's where some towns can't do it because they can't come up with the match. And so, yeah, I think this is I think we can sit down and talk about finances. I was under the mistaken impression from the memo that you were trying to pursue, because it's on here in the calendar that you're trying to do it now. So I guess it's, in the project milestones, it has CDS funding, make applications right now. And I don't think we can do that. So that's good to clarify.
We're only I understand it right, we were only asking the town to match it if we got federal funding. Federal funding.
So it does seem regardless, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and basically just saying that this is for a future project possibly. Would you support this? Essentially, we're saying to the community, assuming we get matching funding, okay, so I get that. It still sounds like it would be useful to sit down with the finance committee
Yeah.
and look at.
yeah,
Those
and once
issues-
again, I think we need to look at everything like the fire boat and the fire truck schedule.
Right,
Because those are big ticket items and
Yeah.
we need the fire department's input on what the priorities are.
right, so I don't think.
For example, if we push a fire truck out
Right.
a couple of years and then we push them all back by that same 2 years, it makes a big difference.
And the problem is we don't have the next truck to be replaced with the tank truck, and if we get a new tank truck, it won't fit in the current station.
Right.
So, we're like literally 15 years.
So it sounds like the action item is for you guys to meet and talk and come up with those priorities before we can make a decision about whether it's, what could be even on the.
I want to back up a little, because I wanted to use this time to explain to everybody, one of the big reasons behind this is living quarters for per diem.
Yeah.
And the importance behind per diem. It's a little more important than just we need coverage. The problem is, by law, if we don't have an EMT on the island, we can't use the ambulance. So if you're having a stroke at your house and there's no EMTs on Shenango, which we're down to 5 EMTs this summer. Our plan, we have a plan, is we're gonna call Yarmouth, we're gonna call Lifeline in Long Island, see who gets here first, but you're looking at probably about an hour to get somebody to the call if there's no EMT or. And it's a real problem, and it's a real concern, it has been for many, many years, it's just getting more and more, intense.
So what would you do in the interim for these per diems for the upcoming summer?
We are trying to get housing. You don't have anybody who wants to rent a room out?
When you say the fire department is trying to get housing, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're trying to find someplace for per diem to stay on the island.
So, I mean, that would be good for the select board to know, to make
It's
that a
much-
priority. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds like, yeah, so we can talk about that at a
Yeah.
future meeting. But in terms of, so it seems to me the housing need is urgent.
It has been for like, since we became town.
So how many per diems do we typically use in a year?
Well, last year we didn't even need one. We had plenty of EMTs. This year, we've lost a couple of EMT, 3 EMTs this year, so, people are stepping down and rightfully so, you know, some have been doing it, it's been doing it for 17 years and they
Yeah.
said that was enough. Understand that, but, we need to come up with. To have 5 people covered 24/7, I don't think the general public understands if the 5 of you had one person had to be on the island all the time, June, July, and August. And I said, hey, can we figure that out tonight? I mean, that's what we're asked to do, and that's what we've done traditionally. But it's a real strain on the people.
Right, but I do think the need for housing is a sort of select board
Right.
concern that we should coordinate with the fire department, so.
It's come up in a very recent time, but yeah, it's in the budget, we put money in the budget for housing. And we're working on trying to find some.
Well, and I think it would be helpful to coordinate though with us, because I hope we might have some avenues to pursue, but I would ask you to go back to the committee and just get some clarity on this timeline. Because it does show, you know, and I think what it shows is applying for CDS funding and then getting town approval. So just ask them to, you know, to clarify what the process is in their minds. And I think it would be important to work with the finance committee, because it shows coordination with the finance committee starting in January, going through May. And so we haven't achieved that as far as I can tell. So, you know, I think we need to kind of stop and regroup and get the process working so that we can, you know, get this in the queue with everything else. I mean, I think we all support the concept of speaking for myself, but I suspect the majority of the board supports the concept of building a new facility. I think we all agree. What I'm hearing tonight, though, that's sort of new information is the urgency for the housing. And so that's not gonna get solved by this project for the next 2 to 3 or 4 years.
We had a meeting together, EMTs with Ralph, and we talked about 2 12-hour shifts during the day. Which would be the only way to do it if there's no housing. And I think that trying to keep in mind, if we do find housing, we're paying that per diem for 24 hours, which is a big chunk of change. So we all need to be looking at what are the best options there. Because even if you hire a per diem for 24 hours, that's means that the 5 people have to cover 6 days. So it doesn't have that big impact that we really, in many ways, need. So we do need to be coming up with looking at every possible solution for the summer.
And what is Long Island's situation
Worse than
EMT wise? So what is it, do you know?
They last time I knew they had like 3 EMTs.
And do we go over and help them on occasion?
Yep.
And vice versa, or mostly one
Yeah, oh
direction?
yeah, no, well, they will help us with transports, like
Yeah.
from Hope Island and wherever, but yeah. And mutual aid is a huge thing. Then we get our members, the more we have to depend on mutual aid, but mutual aid is only mutual if it's.
Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
understand.
So we could go on all night about votes and everything, but, no, we work with Long Island. I went over there, I think 3 times this past, maybe 4 times last summer. And we go for higher acuity calls for a sprained ankle unless nobody shows up, which they all seem to have somebody there. They handle whatever they handle, but.
Okay,
So I just wanted to kind of summarize, and we've talked about a lot of different things, so. We will join you in trying to find the per diem housing.
Yeah.
And just sort of expand our search.
Great.
You'll meet with you and then your committee will meet with the finance committee, develop capital plan and timing. At least revisit the issue of the ADU use, whether that's, feasible or maybe as an interim.
Yeah.
Solution. But one thing I would like to add, there's no reason we can't at least explore this, do the soil tests
right.
for the septic and stuff. That's something that can be done on the
We
short
just
term.
need money appropriated.
Yeah.
for it.
So that's something I think we could.
Well, so one thing I didn't understand, and maybe it's gonna change at town meeting, but is there a reserve fund for the building?
I think their reserve fund says town office now, doesn't
No,
it?
the town office reserve account is specifically for renovating our building in the town office. There is a reserve account for, generally municipal buildings, which is the fire department, transfer station, public works. So that reserve account covers any municipal building with the exception of the school.
So I think there's probably some source of funding,
Can't be that much expensive
No.
to do it.
but
So
we need to
it
have.
seems to me that's something, let's get that checked off first, because it's, and then,
The town did allow the Grinnells, they gave them permission a while back to come onto the town property to do some samples.
I remember.
And so with that whole discussion relative to the Grinnells, that's how the Grinnells were able to determine that the town land closer to where all this building would take place is far more buildable than the other section is. So that's the information that the facilities committee has had and was going off of. With the indication that there is the good chance and the likelihood based off of that research, kind of preliminary research that was done, that it is buildable land.
But it needs to
But
be,
we need, and so do you have actually a site
Yeah,
location of the building? You
Yeah.
did for the other
Yes.
one, okay.
it's,
So it's that one that's in here, okay.
Yeah.
So I think letting Earhart finish what he was summarizing, sort of action items here.
yeah, no, and then just obvious that which is all within your department, is the staffing models that will make it, take some of the pressure off as much as possible.
But I think we sort of have two different things going on. One is sort of the per diem, immediate needs in terms of finances, housing, and support for the fire department, and then the long-term planning for the building. So, and I would, put that, particularly the per diem, once we understand a little bit more about the needs are, trying to get that on the priority list for the summer. It's not very far away. And, so, okay, and then before you step down, I guess, yep,
And there was an email from Dave Bruner on the 25th of February, which has a different version than these.
yes. But this is
But this is,
This is the most recent information that was shared with me specifically for this packet.
okay.
Yeah.
okay,
there's a-
so before Ralph sits down, I just want to see if anybody from the public has any questions, while he's still up there. I think, John, you've asked for, yep, Mark?
Well, that. Anywhere I want, all right. Yeah, were you suggesting that we do a perk test right now for possible site for the septic system?
Yeah, because whether we go now or 2 years from now.
Yeah.
We know it's that land and that spot. Seems,
And I wholeheartedly back that. And I think you said this earlier, Ralph, but in my opinion, any design of a septic for this facility in this area should be at least 5, if not 6 bedroom capacity. That way, you've got your 4 bunk rooms in your proposed building, and then if you have a separate ADU, which is 2 more bedrooms, then you're all set. And then the well will
Right,
be,
we need a water supply.
The well
We need to get,
well will tell its own story.
right,
But it has to be 100 feet away from the field. Dave Bruner had asked me to consider signing up for this committee, but I did not. Take him up on that, but I did attend the last meeting and, you know, I think the facilities committee's done a good job so far with it. They basically, I think, from what I could tell, bumped it up from about 31 to 200 square feet to about 4,050 presently with the design that you're looking at. And I will, Dave has asked me to sort of chat with him on the side, because we've got some experience together from working together for clients and also from the school remodeling project. And we're doing that. I've also urged Dave and the very clever individual from Port City to not forget the outside costs that you're not thinking about: site work,
right.
septic system, well, landscaping, final grading, asphalt. It's gonna be hot top, not cold mix, and so on and so forth, so it's all included. One more comment, if I may, I would probably, I don't know what Liza Jane's got for a number there for a building, but I would probably consider strongly, if we're gonna include something for funding, to have a separate ADU unit included in the proposal. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And I do think that is one thing we could consider, as Gerhard said, as an interim. I don't like we have an immediate need, and it might be something we could do sooner rather than later to help deal with the per diem crisis. I
yeah,
realize
it'd be part
not
of, it'd be part of our plan solution, but you know, something we would use, whether it's for the sheriff or whatever.
pretty funny that we might be one of the first ADU needs on the island.
Yeah,
huh?
sorry, I have one more thing, if I
I
may.
have a question on that before we move on. The ADU idea, what, I know we talked about separate sheriff's quarters, so. And I'm not sure what the feeling was from Port City, but I wanna say it wasn't favorable if we had separate buildings. So maybe if we could consider an attached building with a divide, a clear divide on this building, we might be able to get funding for that easier than building this building and then a ADU. That may be a possibility. That might be something we would want.
Well, I think we can explore that. I was coming from the concept of, like, before June, we might need something, and that's might be possible. So I don't know, I think we've got more to talk about on this, but I think a separate structure for the town as part of this project, you know, living space would make sense. That we have lots of needs that, you know, fellows and other things, so I don't think it would go to waste. And it seems like it would be cheaper to build some external housing rather than, include, other than what's already proposed to include in the building. So we can talk about that. And things like the septic, whether you do 2 separate or do 1, all those things need to be worked out. And I will say, I don't know what Port City's expertise is, but we've learned the hard way that hiring professionals to do some of this stuff, even like a site plan, is worth it, because we flail around on our own and waste a lot of time. So I think it would be to kind of sit down and do the numbers, see what you've got available to do some of this initial work, and then to make some plans for the future. But, yeah, so I think we heard clearly that, the second option is the preferred option too. So, okay. Any more questions for Ralph, Amy?
Do I?
Yep. And we can let Ralph sit down if you unless it's a question for him directly.
Because it's not spent, no, it's actually for the board.
Yeah, okay.
So my question is, around, if you're going to explore the per diem, what are you going to do about per diem, what the need is, and just that more. How does the board go about that? Because I feel like the Fire Rescue Association, part of their mission is recruiting and retaining. I feel like Ralph's job is recruiting and retaining. And I don't think we've ever maxed out our recruiting and retaining. I wanna know who talks about that? What are the options rather than going to per diems? There's many people on this island, there's new young people moving out on this island, there's new very committed people moving out on this island. So what happens with those efforts as opposed to just having per diems come out? I understand that in the short term, per diems could cover a summer, but it's not the solution and it's very, very expensive. And our own fire rescue could get paid, so how would you explore that? That's my question.
So I think that this was a question for the board, so I think the board can first respond and then we'll let you respond.
Yeah.
So to be honest, Amy, I don't know the answer to that question. The fire department is part of the town and so it's, comes under the select board's, responsibility. And I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Earhart and Eliza are probably more up to speed on that, but I understand what you're saying is that, there needs to be a long-term plan. And so this is the first that I've heard that we have kind of I heard through the grapevine just recently, the need for per diems for the upcoming summer. So, I think we need to kind of maybe look at our capacity, what the long-term plans are. It's sort of part of all of our planning. And so I think then it would come back to the select board. The select board's primary role is to deal with sort of the financial, resources to support these different programs. So I think it would typically come like a recommendation from the fire department to the select board about how to manage that issue. And I'm not as tuned into the details about the fire department. Richard?
Well, it's a matter of recruiting, and then recruiting requires an expense, which would come to us and we'd say, yeah, we'll spend on it. I think that sounds like a very.
That's the expense though of the course,
Of the course, yeah.
right? But the drive to want to build it, to have a large service on the island has to come from somewhere. And so how does that work together with Ralph and the fire department and Jeff being the president of the fire association? How does that come together, or does it come together? Can it come together?
Well, usually though, it'd be, again, as Carol said, it would, the drive would arise out of the department itself, fire department itself, right? Recognizing the purpose, the mission and the needs. We work in tandem, particularly along budget line issues to support that. So, I mean, for example, training. I mean, there's realities of training about first having trainers or getting people to be the trainers, right? And the shortages for that and those programs, I'm very aware of that being an issue. So, in an ideal world, we'd have training facilities here where we can do on islands so people, it wouldn't be very hard to walk out of their house, go down to the firehouse and get trained up to be an EMT, right? But right now they have to go find some program somewhere, go off island. So there's a lot of variables that the town itself doesn't have any control over. And so we'd really look for that direction from the department itself. But once we get to the point of attaching dollars to those efforts, then that's more where we get involved, other than, personal relations with people we know and occasionally a stroke of genius, right?
Yeah. And I will add that I think that the issue of training has become critical in the state of Maine. I've emailed the community colleges, there are none in the pipeline right now. So if we're talking about wanting to have someone come out here to do a class, there isn't even a class at SMCC in Central Maine Community College. So the need is that critical. So I think saying that, I think at this point, the fire and rescue department needs the assistance in any way that we can look at to be resourceful in getting this education. And it's happening not just on our island, but all the islands, if you pointed out, up and down the coast. So I think being creative, how can we get, there are people here on the island that would like to be trained as EMTs. But right now, there's not a source of having that happen. And I know that Ralph has been really, resourceful in looking around, and several of us have also been doing it. And it's an issue across the state of Maine. There is funding for it.
In the country.
So there's funding through the community colleges, but they're not offering the classes, and there's also the Alphon Rural Workforce Development that could pay for it. So it's not really a funding issue. It's a finding the instructors issue. So I think we just need to be creative. But I would say that, yes, it needs to come initially within that department, but at this point, with the need that we have, that circle, I think, needs to expand. We need to do support for fire and rescue to be saying, what can we do to be helpful in this?
And typically when we run into sort of a statewide issue or a kind of, rural community, small community need, we start working eventually with our legislators to really apply pressure in the right places. And also the Island Institute has been pretty instrumental on a number of those things, education and other things. So I think the board has access to those avenues as a municipality, so we can pursue that with some, guidance from the department. As far as the separate association and what the relationship is with the fire department, I don't know the answer to that question other than that organization is a 501(c). I assume it has, a structure and, what's the word I'm trying to think of, guidance document that, covers how that organization operates, how they spend money. Yeah, so it's not part of the town, is my understanding. It's independent, and I assume it's a 501(c). So, that group should have their own internal guidance about how they operate. And presumably it would be in cooperation with the fire department. But we don't have any, it's not our role to,
I was just curious as to when you said you're going to look into that and the per diem need, what that looks like. What does it mean to look into it is really what I'm trying to understand.
I don't think we have a plan right now.
no, and I
Okay,
think
so
what I
it's
meant.
new information and
It's
it's
rising to the surface now, so I think.
And
that-
maybe what I was sort of thinking is we're gonna put it on the agenda as an agenda item when the
Yeah.
fire department is prepared to come with probably a pretty, a somewhat specific proposal. We still don't have the fire department's budget, so once that comes in, assuming their per diems in there, then that would be kind of when we take it up. And that would be the time, to have a discussion about it, I think. And this is something that sort of arose, it sounds like over the past few months, the need, right? So. And what I was hearing too is just the housing, I think, is something we all know we kind of want to get on the stick. Maybe we'll be lucky and we could find somebody, but I didn't know that you were already looking for housing, and that should be really coordinated. Since it's a departmental thing, it should be coordinated with the town. But, the fire department association can do whatever their board, or how is it organized?
Every member of the association, which is every good member in good standings, is a voting member. Each member gets one vote.
And do you have like a president or,
That's the president.
Ah,
We have-
okay.
Yeah, we have all
Yeah.
the seats filled.
Yeah.
We have a mission statement.
Oh, okay, that's-
bylaws.
right, bylaws, that was the word I couldn't think of. So just like all the other nonprofits, we try not to get in their way. Yep, so did you want to add anything?
So, yeah, I wanted to elaborate a little bit on Eliza's comment. So SMCC does have EMT classes go, they're booked out 2 years. And the Blue Ribbon Commission, which federal government came up with like 7 years ago, EMT classes right now, EMT basic classes are free. That's not a problem. The instructors are the problem. I talked to Ned Dowdy, actually again tonight, about the specific problem. And there's way more details than you wanna know about. It's a complete mess, the whole system, and it's not working. There
Sounds like
may
it.
be some hope for an EMT class in the neighboring town this fall, maybe. That's not gonna help us right now, but, that may be able to happen. But really, there is no instructors at all, and, I'd love to have an EMT class on the island. I don't think it's gonna happen this time. It used to be really easy. I would just simply send an email or call me EMS. And I could have a class set up the next fall and it would all happen. Those days are gone. It's not just the islands, it's
Oh, I know.
across the board.
I know.
And in that, working group, EMS to British Islands, the two biggest items they're gonna bring to the legislators are, training, both licensure classes, or EMT basic or advanced, and, ongoing. So they are getting it from a lot of angles, but that's gonna, in the legislators asked me EMS to set up this group. And luckily I was asked to be on the group, but that is the biggest focus right now.
And is there a bill in this legislative
There's no
session?
bill,
Not yet.
but what the hope is when they present our findings, that, they'll set up a working group, and they said that I'd probably get a seat in that working group, so I think it's important that I keep following up with that, because
Yep.
it is extremely important, but I've been trying to get an EMT class out here, for a year, but there's just really nothing.
And does the class have to be taught in person generally?
No, so
Okay.
and that's another thing that they talk about is virtual. There is a certain amount of it that has to be.
Yeah, I would think so.
In person, there's some, you can do Zoom ones, it could be Zoom lectures, but then. We talked about that tonight a lot, is you're gonna have to go to one of the sites, they're not gonna, the likelihood that. We'll get somebody to come to Shebig is pretty unlikely, so you could do a Zoom class, but you're gonna have to go to. South Portland or someplace else to do the hands-on. But that may change, in a year or two, with the legislators, but right now, that's the best we can hope for, right now.
But I will say, I did a couple programs through SMCC's workforce training and. They have, I do think that. The islands have a unique challenge with the logistics, and so
Well-
maybe sort of trying to get. Trying to make that. Known in a very, productive way
I can
could help
guarantee-
us get access, right? So.
I can guarantee you that is going to happen.
Right, and I'm surprised, I was impressed at how quickly they pulled things together on they changed the configuration of the courses so people could come and do larger in-person portions together, so it was less trips. So they've done some pretty good things there. So anyway, I think, it's obviously a pretty significant issue and we'll continue to hear about it. And, yep,
So the issue is that there aren't instructors.
yeah, I got it,
Right.
yeah.
And so that's gonna there's a long timeline in order to solve that. And I just wanted to say, I'm so pleased that you were on that, with that working group of doing the different sites. And thank you for agreeing to share the report when you get it. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that report. I think it would be helpful for all of us to take a look when that report comes out about all that. Should be at any moment, right?
I hope.
And so right now is not our only concern, but our major concern is EMS. We feel the fire volunteer fire.
It's back and forth all the time, but yeah, I is very thin,
Okay.
personnel, they're constantly trying to get younger people in, but it's a battle, it's the same
You're looking at the same problem here.
across the country. Is I hear the same excuses, I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't have the time, nobody has the time, as long as you just make the time, that's the only difference.
Yeah, you don't have to tell this board. Okay, so, if you guys, sorry.
I think you're probably wrapping up. The only
Yeah.
comment I'm gonna make is I think this is extremely valuable discussion, but I think when you look at the agenda item, we have really
Oh, sorry.
steered away from it. pretty significantly and some members of the public, if they aren't paying attention to what the agenda item discussions, you know,
I bet.
I think, but I think it is important to maybe in the next meeting or so, put this as an agenda item, so then if people wanna come join and be a part of the discussion, that they have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and I think we are gonna have to put it on the agenda, and I would encourage the fire department to try to get their budget information in, so we can, you know, kind of deal with this as in normal process as part of the, you know, budget for 27. Okay, so and thank you for coming, Ralph, I really appreciate it. And I think you answered a lot of questions, and we'll continue to work with the fire department on the building proposal. And then, next item on the agenda is 2620 to review and presumably approve coastal water's recommendation to the parking and traffic ordinance. And that was in our packet, and this is, sort of coastal waters, I think on their own initiative, decided that they could make some recommendations on how to better use the area around the trap loading section, because, you know, they're not as, we have a pretty large area that was originally designated, and they're proposing to change that. And, you know, I think Vika included it in here, and including what the different sections are, so this includes putting stickers on commercial fishing, you know, vehicles for people who have commercial fishing licenses as a way to designate their, you know, sort of, you know, status in terms of being able to use these locations. And I would say that that's also potentially applicable to Jenks Road, where we're gonna have 2 designated commercial spots, so it's a better way, I think, to go. The sticker, is there anything else you wanted to add to this?
No, I just had a couple of fishermen had approached me about this, especially after they saw that the approved in the ordinance allowing the extended parking for the commons and kids place, and then later it was proposed for you know, first responders and medical personnel. And so I encouraged them to bring it to coastal waters and have coastal waters bring a recommendation. And a few weeks back, I brought it prematurely to the board and asked you to postpone it, and so they've revisited this, and there's just really 2 sections in the ordinance that they're asking to add and or change, and I think they're great suggestions, and I hope the board takes it into consideration and approves them.
And basically, the differences are to sort of scrunch up the trap loading area, right?
What they're recommending is right now in June and November, you've got that whole section is no parking. What they're suggesting is to only limit to a parking spot on either side of that crossed out mark that people often park in. And we would more or less work town staff, public works, fishermen, and kind of cone off those areas. So then as a fisherman comes in and they need to back up, load and unload their traps, they have that space to do it. But they didn't feel like the need was there, because historically the fishermen who use that area are either no longer with us or they are no longer using that space. And so they wanted to, I think, kind of work with the community to show that that isn't necessary. And then, you know, showing some good compromise on their part, I think.
So to clarify, this is gonna be reduced down only to that hatch.
Yeah,
That's
so,
small.
well, to 3 spaces,
So,
so the hatch and 2 spaces on
And
it.
it'll-
yeah, so this would really technically only be applicable in November. Because if you recall, as the ordinance is stated now, Memorial Day to Labor Day, that section is crossed out and no parking, and we've been utilizing it as a turnaround area. And so in June, the idea would be that those 2 spaces would be coned off for fishermen. The rest of it would still be used as a staging area and turnaround area. In November, those 2 spaces would be blocked off, and the rest of the spaces would be available for resident parking like does not historically been.
Well, then the stickers are primarily just to identify the fishermen's cars in those space, when they're in that space?
Well,
They don't get ticketed?
So to identify the fishermen, so when the parking attendant is marking the tires, they will see the sticker and they will know that they'll, you know, mark the tire 3 times, but they don't give them the sticker unless they're there for the 4th day in a row.
So that's really for
So
the
they can
winter months.
identify.
So that's, so the,
Yeah,
the
that's what I'm
commercial
confused.
fishing sticker thing is really because they travel to Portland and stuff and they might be gone for a couple days, kind of like what we dealt with actually EMS.
That's so parking anywhere in the normal parking
Yeah,
area.
and the question was, Carol and I were both at that coastal waters meeting when they discussed, the question was raised, would you want this year round? And the fishermen were very honest and said that we think it would get abused, no, that we, recognize that the area is more clustered and more congested in other times of the year. During the winter time is when it's more emptied and the fishermen tend to go and, you know, have their boats in Portland or other areas versus at the Stone Pier or Chandler's or whatnot. And so this is how they were really working with the community and providing a proposal that they thought would be fair for everybody. So I give them a lot of credit. They put some time and effort and they had the discussion a couple of times and tried coming up with a good compromise that would accommodate their needs, but also not feel like they're being too greedy in their ask.
Also, while we're on this topic of this hash marked area, it's always been a puzzle to me what that means during normal times. It's,
Don't park.
and a lot of people who don't park think it means.
I think this spring, we're going to maybe recolor those areas because I think that area and then in my opinion, one additional parking spot has been added kind of unintentionally closest to CTC that is really causing a lot of congestion.
Yeah.
So this spring, when things cleared out, every couple of years, the Public Works will go and kind of repaint the lines. And this will definitely be a priority
So
for
that,
this.
those lines mean no.
We
parking.
might need to put physically no parking
Yeah,
because
that would
I
be
think
great.
the lines are not enough for some people to recognize that that means no parking.
I think it's clearer to have it like that, so that's a good point, and, you know, this has been a work in progress, initiated really by Vika, and Eliza Jane to try to improve the parking circulation, and I have to say, I think people are adapting and it's been pretty successful, so good kudos to you guys.
I think it's also good practice, cause if you look at the plan of what the future
Right.
changes to the Stone Pier are going to be, that turnaround area and no parking primarily in that area is in the design phases of what the future is gonna look like, so it's the stepping stone to getting people to start doing that process a little earlier.
So this is part of the parking and traffic ordinance, so we need a motion and
Oh, I would love to make the motion, but I would like to, we want to have comments from the public, but I want to say the moment I read, I appreciated that the fishermen have identified they could do it with a smaller space and that can happen really in November. But when I read the need for up to 72 hours for commercial fishing, my comment was, why has that not happened yet? And that tells me what a good idea was. So I'm really pleased. Do we want to have comments from?
well, and normal, yeah, we could do a motion and then take any more comments from us or the public.
So I would love to make the motion to accept the changes in the traffic and parking ordinance to what is proposed for section 105, paragraph K, and section 6, paragraph.
Actually, there's 3 sections.
There's 3. I'm sorry, section 105, paragraph P,
Right.
and section 6, paragraph C.
Anybody second on that motion? Richard? So now, any further
No,
discussion from the board?
No, I'm good.
Any questions or discussion from the public? Okay, all in favor? Good.
Mark, did you want to say something?
Mark want to say something?
Oh, did you say yes?
Quickly,
Oh, sorry.
I'll be very quick.
I'm looking at the
Raises
owl.
his hand very well, he was one of the observers that-
Like, you know,
And I'm glad this came before the select board and that it got approved. And like Vika said, I'm glad that the fishermen are showing some flexibility down there. Historically, if you watch that stone work, it's amazing that it functions at the level that it does. It's great. Here's a suggestion for the town. I was a big fan of closing the area up from Memorial Day to Labor Day. I understand the goal of it. I've seen it work some down there. I've seen it not work some. My suggestion is to ask the sheriff, whoever is here from the county, and maybe the parking attendant, to help people once in a while, not drive down and just stop. So that when you come down, you can't do anything because they're in the way. I know they're just watching, I know they're just visiting, I know they don't mean any harm, but coaching can be critical to making a facility work down there. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for that. All right, so moving on to the last item on the agenda. We did.
Wait.
Yeah, we did. I just missed the mark in the process. So 26-21. This is discussion on assigning select board members as liaisons to town departments, similar to the current practice of assigning members to subcommittees. And we've also assigned members as ad hoc members of committees. So we have a number of select board members, like I'm on the finance committee, for example. So I think this was, it's kind of interesting that we never considered it before, but I think Erhard, you're the one who suggested it, and maybe you wanna
Sure.
describe your reasoning.
Yeah, and Victor, thanks for, kind of putting together a little bit of summary on that. So the idea for me really came out of sort of three experiences. One was, recently I participated with Vika in meetings with Axiom and also the fire department. And, I think sometimes having more voices, communicating the same message in a different way can be helpful. And that was my experience in those meetings. And then, as you know, I'm working on the performance appraisal redesign and for the town administrator. But as I was thinking about that, I started thinking of my experiences as when I worked in San Francisco as head of the paramedic division, which was a division of the health department. And, I was a chief of the department and I pretty much ran a lot of stuff, but there were definitely times dealing with like personnel matters, budget issues, performance appraisal issues, where it was really helpful having somebody kind of that I answered to be part of the process. And so in thinking that through, I just thought that it would be good to designate, have designated representatives from the board to represent the town interests through Vika, with, assigned to specific departments. And I thought basically we'd be able to provide a generalized oversight from the board's perspective of those departments beyond like our monthly meetings, right? And the TA reports were a little more involved. And I think the advantages are, one, that we'd be able to communicate, our priorities as a town, maybe in a slightly different way that Vika does. I mean, she's got so many hats that she has to wear. And sometimes maybe she's working with, particular individuals and maybe hasn't been able to get the communication across in the way she'd like to. And it's helpful to have another voice. I think we could be very helpful to provide with strategic planning, budgeting, and personnel issues, as I said, which, was kind of on my mind. And then I think if we have our own, sort of expertise or interest in a particular department's functions, then we bring that to the table with her. So anyway, so that was my proposal, and I'll happily volunteer myself if we feel like this is a good idea.
So I think starting down at the far end of the table, David, what's your thought on that proposal?
The proposal itself, or?
Well, I mean, yeah, what do you
I
think
think it
about?
makes a lot of sense to get some involvement at the board level, yeah.
Okay, Richard?
And I agree, I think this is really a great idea, at least to try and see how it goes, it can't hurt. And it would only reinforce communications and sort of fill in a gap that can happen all the, at any good time. Right? Or,
Our town is moving to the young adult stage. And right in the age of things.
We hope.
And what I look at is how right now our staffing is pretty stable, things are going well, and I think I'm just gonna knock on wood, but I think that that's a good time for us to become involved, because making sure that things are staying with good communication, so it's also a way for us to show support for those departments as well.
Right.
So thank you, Gerhard. I thought, again, it was like the parking for the fishermen. It was such a good idea. Why has this not happened yet? So I think that's a good one.
And I would agree. And I think this is nothing that we really have to adopt. I mean, it's really just something we can decide tonight, kind of as a consensus. We don't have to write a policy or an ordinance, Herb. So I think, and I guess, while we're on the topic then, I think the board is, strongly in favor of this. So I think, starting with you, Erhard, is there a department, I think you're already working with the fire department.
Right, yeah, just kind of to formalize that, I think.
But I also think that they're not the only department that could use probably some, care and attention, so.
We were having, I think,
Well-
you're currently in conversation about the,
Right. I just want to say, the minute I saw it, I was like, I want dibs on the tree.
Yay.
So we'll have to figure out how to not have three people in that meeting, because I have a lot of interest in that too, but
Well,
we'll
you
figure
can
it
have
out.
two people, so.
We can have two.
Okay, well, you can come there, Hart, but I would,
And
that was my
Okay,
preference right away, to be on the transfer station committee.
and I do think that, remember, this is really a position where you are representing the select board typically. In many cases, I think Vika will be there with you in any kind of interaction, and it's important we don't, we don't run off and try to solve problems on our own, which is, it's tempting,
Right.
right? So, and Richard, did you have any particular, I'm looking at the list in particular.
nothing jumps out to me, but, I could, public works is, I guess, on this list, I think it's something. It's like the transfer station.
Well, it is.
But aren't they also integrated, those two?
We can.
No, they're
It's a
different
separate department,
departments.
same guy, but
Okay.
separate departments.
Yes.
And then administration, David, since
Administration.
Yeah. and since I'm dealing with the administration all the time, it'd be
Oh,
good
that's
if you
right.
were like the sort of, other person
Yeah.
that deals with them, because they're
That's
probably
fine.
sick of dealing with me. All right, so I think we've got those covered for the moment, and it may come up that there are other, like frankly, for me, the planning board might be it's not a department, so that's a committee liaison, but I'm trying to think in terms of, those are the primary departments that we have covered. It would really be also potentially finance or something like that through administration. So
Yeah.
I guess that's really
The
it.
way that I see it is, if the conversation that I already engage with the departments and the personnel and, the meetings that I have with them ahead of the budget discussions, those would be the type of discussions that I would seek your input and have you join in on those. I think really important thing to keep in mind is that this process wouldn't necessarily give you kind of the free for all authority to be able to go and visit the public works department and talk to all of the different employees and want to know what they're doing, or visit the transfer station and want, so I think distinguishing that for the employees reasons is really important. So it would be, more or less me reaching out to you and saying, I this is my idea, I'd like to meet with the department, this is what I'm struggling with, this is where I could seek some assistance, can you please join me on this
Right.
conversation?
Right.
And that's kind of, I think we've started exploring that a little bit more and just formalizing it with, or making sure that you're all in agreement that this is the process going forward would be really helpful.
That makes a lot clearer what, like, for instance, my role would be on public work, so I would essentially be almost like,
On call.
an observation. I'd be observing the process, and then I would understand public works better and be able to communicate it.
Right, but it's not like you're attending a lot of, interactions. I think
Right.
it's really sort of as needed.
Right.
And I think, as Erhard said, one of the things he pointed out, which is, I think important is Nika manages all these departments,
Right.
she's in charge, but she kind of reports to us. So having us also in the room kind of can help kind of bolster sort of the
Authority.
town's position and authority in terms of whatever issue is being discussed. I also is just keeping us as a board informed, kind of spreading out that responsibility.
Yeah, it's a similar role that you would play on other committee boards, but even being on a committee, you still are obligated to, represent the select board, but not necessarily make decisions on their behalf, you're just.
And
A
could
body.
report back.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good phase for young adults, but.
well, that's why it's great having new people on the board who bring new ideas that,
Yeah.
as Eliza said, why didn't we think of that sooner? So thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Good one.
So moving on to other business, I usually start with Vika, anything there?
I just have a few communications to share,
So.
but nothing.
Communication, any other business? I guess I will just bring it up under other business, but we are in the process of pulling together this latest grant, which is to the state for the marine, what is it, public working waterfront, working waterfront infrastructure fund. And, so we're gonna ask for the full 2 million, who knows what we'll get. We've been working closely with GEI and I think we're getting pretty close. I will send you a link to the application. I was confused, well, actually, I think they changed the submittal date. We thought it was Friday. Now we find out it's the middle of next week, which is good. But our goal is to get it done this week anyway, but it's nice not to feel like it has to be like.
And what will it cover?
It's for the stone wharf
The
only,
stone.
and we're gonna ask for the full 2 million. I'm not expecting to get that, but it might be helpful for everybody it might be informative to read the grant application, just so you know what it's like. And this is the second one of these that we've really submitted. This one is specific to public working waterfront, where the other one was generally working waterfront, and this money comes from NOAA, the big NOAA grant, so it has a lot of hoops we have to jump through if we do get it. So there's another grant program coming up in a couple months that is broader in terms, it has to be kind of adaptation, but it doesn't have to be working waterfront, it could be roads, it could be anything, could be buildings. So that one we'll also explore. And one of the things I think the board is aware, but just in case you're not, is that, we have a policy that all grant applications have to sort of come through the select board and people cannot submit grant applications on behalf of the town independently. And I'm not sure everybody's aware of that, but that's just important. It's also, so we're kind of the funnel. And almost always Vika is the signator of the application so that it's, officially coming from the town, and she has authority to do that. So when we give her that. So that's kind of why it has to come through the select board, so that somebody doesn't just hand her a grant application. She's not gonna sign it unless the board has said, yay, okay. So, anyway, and there's a lot of stuff out there. So these CDSs, I hadn't thought about that for this round since we just got one, but I think we have a finance committee meeting on Friday and we can explore whether we should consider anything else for a CDS application. So, anyway, that's all I have. So I'll share that with you probably over the weekend and you can look at it. Yep.
Okay, and just a brief other business thing. So I've gotten some feedback on the TA performance appraisal draft. I can meet with you because we were gonna meet personally because you had some ideas. Thank you, Richard, for communicating. But if you have any
yeah.
specific input, feedback, I'll incorporate it and I don't know if that's something we would do in a board meeting to go over that or just
More of a workshop
kind
kind
of a workshop thing, so.
And one question I had as I was reviewing that, I went to see if I could find the TA job description. I found one that we had edited as a board, but I actually couldn't find, it changed quite a bit from 2013 or whatever it was, and then in 2023, about that time, we changed it. But I couldn't find a final one. Was there ever a final job description?
Yeah.
So
I thought
maybe,
it's in the folder there, you guys have access to a person.
I looked in there and I couldn't find it.
I'll scan,
So-
yeah, because I had to sign it. It was, it got redone when I got rehired. And
Okay, and
I can scan it, I can scan the one that I think the one that's in it is the working copy. And
That's
I
what I
think
thought.
that finalized one got printed out, I signed it and just put it in my personnel file.
It would be good, I think that would be
Yeah,
a
great
good
to have that.
context to have, and we should, should have had that before we did your review. But, I think if you could share that with the board and put it in a place where we can find it, then that's kind
Those
of,
two should reflect each other.
yeah, they should be compatible.
I could do that.
Okay,
And we should have that when we meet,
Yeah. it'd be
Yeah.
good.
to make sure those are in spirit.
okay. So anything else on other business? All right, moving on to communications, Vika.
One communication which I already spilled the beans to you is, I had started engaging with, the owner of the meat cottage, the one that we have rented for several years for the sheriff. Earlier than we have ever done before, because last year when, we engaged at the same time frame that the town has historically communicated with him, that's when he gave us an unexpected spike in price. Him and I went back with a couple of emails. He did drop it down by a couple $100, the cost for the upcoming season, but in that email is where he also said that, just to let us know that he is planning to put the property up for sale in the near future. When I, so I actually have, when I had told him that it would be helpful to know of that information because it's been a very integral part of our sheriff contract, and it would be helpful to have the time to be able to find a replacement. I did not get a reply to the, any kind of, follow-up as far as a time frame. But it very well likely could be based on, some conversations I've had with my neighbors that, he probably, after this season, my assumption is after this season, he might put it on the market. So that's something that obviously would have a big direct impact on the town and, not having that property available for future rentals if it gets sold and knocked down and something bigger built across the street from my house.
But we do have it for this summer.
He gave me a dollar value for this season.
Okay.
I am going to, send him the contract and make sure that we sign it, because I think whether we have part-time sheriff or a full-time sheriff, I hope that the board is in agreement that we should secure that place.
Yep.
Especially with the, with the, EMT, possibilities, and then kind of from there on. Go from there.
Is that a year-round residence?
No,
No.
it is not. It's just bare studs on the inside. It's about as cottages come.
So we have a housing problem in the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the whole country does.
Right, so we're just part of the same.
So that's one communication. The other communication, which you all were CC'd on, and it was after the agenda had already been said, Mike Morse emailed, I'm not gonna go into a lot of details, we can bring it up at a future discussion, but the summary of that is that the residents have chosen not to engage with the town. But there is still an opportunity for the town to be involved if the town chooses to be. So I think it would be
Yeah.
helpful for the board to maybe have one final agenda item discussion and make a determined decision. Do you wanna kind of proceed separately or do whatever, you know, you might have for ideas, so.
So
Those are the two big communications. A lot of my other communications have been really relative to grant related stuff or Jenks Road or, you know, things around things that we're already all actively working on and you're aware of, so.
So any other important communications that people have had with community members or anything? Okay. And, so for items on a future agenda, I think we're looking at, you know, sort of fire department, staff, EMS staffing.
Approve the minutes.
Oh, sorry, to approve the minutes of February 18th, 2026.
So,
No, so David, yep,
so.
yeah, okay.
And
It
this,
was-
this overlaps with, there was items to be placed on the future agenda, hold on, but it was, we did talk about wanting to talk at the next meeting about the fee structure for the transfer station, so making sure that's on our next agenda.
Well, we're on the minutes right now.
I know, but it was in the minutes that we would do it in the,
Okay,
anyway, I'll agree to approve the minutes, but. Alright.
okay, so the minutes of February 18th, David made the motion and Richard seconded it, yeah, okay, all in favor? And what you just said, Eliza Jane, is items for the next agenda are, you were saying the transfer station fee schedule.
We're still
and
working on engaging the
Oh, you're not-
commercial
the wood waste.
folks, so once that happens, then.
And I would say, right, I would say we're not gonna implement that till next fiscal year, so I think we have a lot on our plate, so I'm not gonna worry about getting it on the next agenda, but we are gonna notify them.
Yep.
All right, and then, and I did see today that Swans Island's wood waste dump is closed because of their overcapacity, so we're not the only ones.
Oh.
Then the other thing, we need to do the Waldo Point and kind of review that. And in the meantime, since that meeting is a few weeks, it's, you know, we don't have it 2 weeks from now, but 3 weeks from now. I think, we can, so he sent some information along with that and sort of a sketch. And so I encourage you to look at that. And I think our decision at that meeting is, do we want to go forward with working with them? And if so, do we want to engage? We had talked about legal concerns and engineering concerns, so do we want to engage? So that would be the decision. So it will be the kind of thing we'd want to take action at the next meeting if we want to do something. And if there's anything else in the meantime, so in terms of, so we have a nonprofit workshop, request workshop this Saturday, and it's a workshop format, right?
It's a workshop format and you've been emailed the packets. I hope that you've all looked at it because we will not be printing out and making paper copies unless you're requesting it, because it will be hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of pages. But the last 2 or 3 Fridays that I've sent you the select board packet, I've attached the link to the nonprofit folder. And in that folder is each individual folder for each nonprofit, and there is a lot of documentation there, so. I would prefer not to have to waste paper in the town office on printing out a packet for each one of you of that. So if you have not seen it, please let me know,
Well, if you
because there's
can't
a lot
find
of
it-
information in there.
Although, in our case, we actually have a lot of trees we could actually make good use of.
I know, but we're also paid for the printer and per page and, well, it's minuscule, it still adds up, so and a lot of the times, you know, I'm sure some of you just go and toss these things, or a lot of people just toss stuff, so I'm trying to be mindful of not killing more trees than the ones that have to be killed.
I like that.
And there are some, some requests for increases, so that's what and we don't decide at that meeting because it's a workshop, but we decide during our budget meeting what we do, but you can ask the questions. And it isn't necessarily true that people will be here from those organizations, but likely. We used to have them come and do a presentation, we're not doing that format anymore.
Can you just clarify this, like, for example, I'm thinking about the performance credits thing, if we all wanted to sit down and work on that as a workshop, how do we make that distinction?
That's a toughie.
You still have to advertise it.
It has to
I mean, it seems kind
The-
of weird to be doing it someone's specific, not a person's, but a job class,
No.
performance appraisal discussion. And then have
That's
public-
As long as it's not the personnel, it's not the
Yeah.
individual, that has to be public.
Okay.
Everything in the
But-
municipal government, with the exception of a few things, is public.
Okay.
Record, so the biggest difference between a workshop and a regular board meeting is in a regular board meeting, you're making action items and you're making decisions. With a workshop, there will be no decision making, you're actively kind of working on creating and, engaging on things, but it is still, if there's gonna be more than 3 of you, it still has to be advertised.
But if we wanted to opt to have a meeting at the Ross Room at a different time, we could do that.
Yeah.
For something like that, and then we're not.
Yeah.
Projecting.
Just like with the off-island retreat that we did, we advertised that.
Nice.
We said that that was gonna happen and, nobody,
But you couldn't stream it. Okay. So. I think that's it on the regular agenda, and now we can move into executive session. So could somebody make a motion exactly as it says here? Eliza,
Okay, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to 1.MRSA 40568 personnel and 1 MRSA 40563 acquisition of real property.
second from David, all in favor? Okay.